where materials are not handing the teacher a lesson plan. So it's really guidance and support the way the class is headed in a particular subject area, and then the teachers take that and adapt it to their students and what the needs are in the class.
Correct, but my curiosity was, are we purchasing these?
No, the teachers are writing their own lesson plans.
Okay, that makes what I wanted.
So,
Believe them.
with all of the costs, including those that I just listed, this was our initial draft of the budget. And so when you look at what type of increase that would drive to the towns, this gets back to the staffing question. This gets back to how do we support 3 schools, 2 of which have very low enrollments, and how much can we expect taxpayers to pay to support our educational needs. I don't think anyone on the board felt like these were increases that people could support. We have a lot of people on fixed incomes. We have a lot of people, especially as everything ends up costing more and more and more, and nobody felt like an 11.3% increase in what towns were paying was manageable. So this is where we started in terms of the draft. So after that, had a conversation with the board. Where do we need to go? What is kind of a rough target in terms of where we need to get? We have a transportation fund that we can use, and we'll still have $200,000 in it to purchase a special ed bus. It's a reserve account. It will not cost taxpayers a cent. It's money that they've already approved us to use for this particular purpose.
So it costs us.
6 teaching positions. You can see how that will happen. 6 ed tech positions. Many of those were not filled. We had budgeted for a permanent sub, meaning someone to be there daily, because we often run into situations where at Mollyocket the number of people out exceeds the number of available subs. We thought it would be a good idea to have someone on hand to help, but we could not hire people in those positions, and so those were 2 of the positions. We were not able to hire 1 kindergarten ed tech at Mollyocket, so a lot of those 6 didn't result in actual people losing a job. They were just positions that couldn't be filled. We are going back to having a halftime counselor here, halftime counselor at New Suncook, and 4 physicians in the facilities department. So that comes to about $1 million. No one likes the prospect of cutting positions. No one. But it's also not realistic to pass along that kind of an increase to taxpayers, especially in this particular budget year. So, summarizing, what is our total budget increase? What does that look like? Because those positions that I just mentioned, except for the 4 in facilities, were all in regular instruction, there's a decrease there, despite that increase in Freiburg Academy tuition. So that's down 0.5%. I'll talk a little bit more about why that increase in special education happened. Other instruction, that's an increase in stipends for sports. 8.7% seems like a lot, but it's $12,000. It's a very small cost center. You can sort of see what the rest of those are. There was a decrease in facilities because of the positions. The food service amount, as we have had fully reimbursable meals, we have accumulated some reserve money in food service. What we do is we do a transfer at year's end. It has generally been about $65,000. We need much less to make things work for next year, so that's why there's a decrease there. We're not cutting food for kids or anything like that. It's just we need less to operate that. So the total, in terms of expenditures, not what towns are paying, but what is being spent, is a 2.1% increase. So when you think of all of those increases, I feel like we have done as good a job as we could to create a budget that still meets the needs of kids and is responsible to taxpayers. For special education, those out-of-district placements that are required, the ones where we have a van or a small bus transporting students to programs, whether that's Oxford, Auburn Lewiston, whatever. Those are driven by the individualized education plans. We cannot meet the needs of all of our special education students in district, and we are legally responsible for providing the appropriate education for those kids. It is costly. So we have 4 or 5 more students next year who are going to need those out-of-district placements. The question was asked, can we do something different? No. No, because if we do something different and we don't meet their needs according to the IEP, then we'll end up in due process with the parent, there will be legal costs, and we would probably end up paying more for compensatory education and settling a lawsuit with the parent.
So you mentioned transporting kids to Lewiston, Auburn. For whatever programs are going over there, you mean to tell me there is nothing closer?
That's what I mean to tell you.
What are those programs in Lewiston, Auburn that we're taking them for?
I'm curious why you're so skeptical. I mean, honestly,
Because this is to educate us, isn't
do you
it?
really think?
Are you
that
being
if-
cocky?
No, I'm asking a question. You're
I asked a
doubting the
question.
fact that we would utilize a program that's closer to us if we could? I mean,
Isn't this a meeting to try to educate the taxpayers, which is us, and we're asking questions, and you're being condescending? So, come on. I asked a question.
What are the programs?
What are the programs? That's a pretty simple question.
Margaret Murphy is the program I was referencing.
That wasn't so hard, was it?
No, really wasn't. Does that satisfy you?
I'm just wondering why this has to be an argument and why you had to cop an attitude when I
Might be
simply
because of your
asked.
attitude.
I'm just kind of stunned that there's this undertone of we're not doing things in a
I'm wondering,
financially
has anybody
responsible way.
considered maybe crossing
Your
state
comment
line?
was, you mean to tell me there's nothing closer? Yeah, I mean to tell you there's nothing closer.
We have New Hampshire, that's what I'm insinuating. Is there any possibility that we could cross state line if there was something in New Hampshire?
We would be utilizing the most cost-effective program if it were available, period. Donna, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a handout here, and it says for the 26 budget that the cost for out-of-district placements, the self-contained cost under special ed for out-of-district has increased by $930,000.
That is,
Is that what you're referring to here? Is that the same thing?
that is only the out-of-district costs. That's not the total increase to special education. If you were to look at a breakdown of the budget,
Oh, I see.
there's
Okay.
resource,
Which contain these
there's
out-
self-contained, there are various,
So special ed as a whole increased nearly by $1 million?
yes. Yes.
For how many students in the district is that? I mean,
How many special education students do we have?
yeah, like,
Pat, you wanna?
Yeah, there's about 289 right now, but there's a lot of those as well.
That's just special. It's not special needs, that's
I'm sorry?
When somebody,
yeah.
we have 289 students that need special education required outside of our district.
No, that's not out-of-district. That includes all students who are identified.
So what do they need? I guess I'm unfamiliar with why we need so much special education help inside the classroom.
Is that
So I don't
IEP's
remember
go?
that kind of education when I was a kid.
I don't think she
My
understands
teacher
that.
was really good. She was a whippersnapper, I guess.
So I'll let Pat jump in, but my explanation would be, there is a process of identification. So if someone suspects there's a learning disability, you enter an identification meeting. You determine whether the student is eligible for services. different special education students need different levels of service, and it just so happens that some of our students, their needs far outweigh our ability to program for them in district. And when you're talking about students with significant behavioral needs, these are the things where I have a lot of conversations with parents who don't understand why, when my child just wants to go to school and learn, do we have this disruption happening on a daily basis. We try to program, we try to offer supports, but our ability to meet their needs in our classrooms is not possible for all kids. So when we run out of options, when we've used all of our available personnel programs in district, then we would need to move to an out-of-district placement for some kids. Pat?
Correct, and there are different categories of disabilities that the state has mandates around. The majority of our students have specific learning disabilities and speech and language disabilities, which we can handle in the district. But then there are those other categories that require sometimes more significant programming that we cannot provide in the public schools. And to answer your question, when I was growing up, and probably you were growing up, many of these students were in the public schools. They were in separate schools. They were at Highland. They were not visible in the society. And those are the kids we're talking about that require more and more supports than we can provide. My teachers, I should say our teachers, do the best they can and are very successful with the majority of our students. We're talking a handful of kids that need more than we can provide, but it's very costly because we're not near anything. We're not, they have to go to private special purpose schools in most cases, but we do have a public private school that we're a part of, so it's a little less costly for us to try to send our students there when we can, but they don't take some of those other students with those specialized needs who require therapists and behavior specialists and multiple people working with them at one time. We just, if we had a program for them, we couldn't staff it, and we don't have them in our schools for them. And it's unfortunate. I would love to have our kids in district. It's very hard to have to put a kid away, but we don't have a choice sometimes. And the other option, the other problem is, please don't take this the wrong way, but when kids get removed from Freiburg Academy, I have no choice but to find a place because we don't have our own high school. So those kids automatically have to be sent away. And that happens, and it's happening more and more. So it rises, those costs are driven by student needs only. If I could keep them here, I would.
How many kids are being removed?
Pardon me?
How many are being removed?
This year so far, too.
Is it behavioral or is it educational? I guess that's my point, are we having a behavioral issue or is it an educational issue?
I can't give you specifics because they would identify a student, but it's more related to behavior and or their disability. So those kind of go hand in hand, and I can't elaborate
I
further.
guess I don't want to pay for somebody's behavioral issues, and I don't know why that would be.
Well, it's not all behavioral, it's disability as well.
Pardon me?
It's disability.
It's disability
Yes.
driven, yes.
So you're not just paying because this kid doesn't want to go to school and he's
No.
put up a fight.
No.
Some of these kids actually have disabilities
Yes.
that go far beyond what the teachers can handle, that they have no control on. Speaking from someone who has an autistic child. So some things you cannot control.
That's accurate. And thank you. So,
I just want to leave it. Pat and her assistant Megan are very, very conscientious about the spendings for special ed.
Oh, I'm
And
not
she
saying
is,
people aren't.
they are
conscientious.
amazing at trying to find appropriate yet less costly placements for our children that need it in this district.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying.
No,
people
I'm
aren't
just telling you, I
conscientious.
just want people to know that it's not like she's just finding whatever. She's
no,
finding the
I'm not-
best placement
I'm
at
not
the
saying
best
that at all.
cost for our district.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that the teachers
No, I'm
aren't,
just letting you know,
aren't
this is,
doing what they
she's
can.
amazing, we're
in
very
the
lucky to
classroom
have
with what
both
they
of
have
them.
to deal with. I think a lot of teachers probably their hands are tied. I'm not saying that either. I'm just stating that as a society, I think perhaps maybe we need to be a little bit more, strict, a little bit more involved. We need to be a little bit more, because these expenses are getting to be a little bit outrageous and we need to do something because and I'm not speaking on special ed. I wanna do this as a whole overview. I mean, I see every single year, Jay, you'll know, I come to these meetings every year and I say, every year, for the past I don't know how many, why is there no money in this budget for technical? None for technical.
Right, and I'm not sure if you just haven't heard my answer, but
Oh,
if
because
we
we
were,
shipped them out to another,
if we were operating the center,
that hasn't,
we would budget for it.
right, if we had the sense, but we have how many millions for special ed? Well, do you know how many plumbers we need? Do you know how many mechanics we
All of the
need?
Freiburg Academy students who want to access Bo can.
But they're not trying.
They get on a bus
They're-
and leave town.
Okay, what I'm saying to you is our students are pampered and they're socially walked through life to be cared for, and the teachers do a wonderful job at that. I'm not saying they don't. They do. They get the special care for that. But there's other things that they need in education that we don't prepare them for, that they do need. That's lacking.
Yeah, sure.
I stand up and I do better. She raises a point that it's my passion. For 50-some years, the school program has not changed. It's doing the same thing today as it did 50 years ago, preparing a kid to go to college. My perspective is maybe 30% of them will go to college and do very well. But if you can't graduate after 4 years and make $100,000 a year, you're never going to pay your student loans off. The majority of them go to school because they're programmed that that's what they should do. They go to school for 4 years and they're paying their student loans until they're eligible for Social Security.
Thank you.
So my point is, it's not the number so much, as I feel we've let the kids down because the program is pushing them only one way. There needs to be a change in the program so that the kids have the opportunity. Right now in 7th grade, they could start a program in electricity, building construction, plumbing, automotive, engineering. Start a program in 7th grade. They could graduate high school with half, 3/4 of the education they need to get a journeyman's license and go out and be productive. If you're not going to make $100,000 a year with a 4-year college degree, you're wasting your time because you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to figure out how to pay the student loan.
True.
My point is, every year we sit down and we get another 3%, 4%, 5%. We've been doing the same thing for 50 years. The outcomes aren't there. The jobs we need don't require 4 years of college, all of it. Kids would be better suited to be put in a program. All you have to do is go down and look at the Mennonites and the Amish communities. For $2,000 a year, they educate their kids. Now, I'll grant it's not the same education. I won't argue that a bit. But when they get done 8th grade, they are productive because they learn a trade. And all I'm saying is more of our kids would benefit. I feel we've let the kids down.
Yeah.
We're spending this money, and my question is, will the jobs be there when they graduate? And I don't think they will.
They won't.
I have one
Yes.
Kids have, I'm aware that in the past, it was an option, but I'm not sure where it stands now. Do they have an option, do they have access to the Region 11 and the tech programs at Lake Region and Oxford Hill?
Yes.
They still do.
It's when they're older, it's not when they're
I mean,
12,
I
13
think what
years
he's
old.
referring to is what we used to have, is where in middle school we'd have things like home economics, or we would have
We have all
shop.
that in high school.
We offered probably 12 to 15 of our 8th grade students access to Lake Region. They would go for half a day until the 9th grade diversified occupations program and the 10th grade diversified occupations programs were eliminated. And then it became hard because giving the students 1 year of something where there was no successor opportunity, especially at the cost, it didn't make a lot of sense. So I hear what you're saying. If money were no object, I would have no problem thinking of it creatively. I would love to have so much more staffing to be able to do so many more things. But we're required to teach certain content areas to kids.
That's the problem.
Oh, I can't change the requirement. Yes.
Jay, aren't
can
there,
change
there-
the curriculum.
aren't there also a number of offerings at Freiburg Academy too, like electricity and
Yes.
a few other, what are the areas
I
that they
think
have now?
freshmen might also be able to do a little woodworking. Maybe there's a metals program as well. Yeah. They've tried to do more on campus.
Is there a number of data processing?
Jay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The Freiburg Academy tuition and insured value factor increase, just a couple questions. Is that a standard increase in the past, and you said it might even be higher next year? Does the district have any choice in that matter as far as contract, or if they come out with a number, they say this is what you're paying?
Yeah, that's the challenge. So by virtue of our contract, we pay the state-assigned maximum allowable tuition, and the IVF is a portion of that. Every December, this number comes out that we have no ability to predict. And I'm sorry to go into a long, convoluted explanation, but the IVF is really important right now for a different reason. So it could be a 4% increase, it could be a 6% increase, it could be 6.5%. So we're basically saying, I wonder what that increase is going to be.
They
We're-
set it? The
the-
Freiburg sets it, or
the state sets it.
Okay.
But we don't find out what that number is until December. The other issue is, as we've talked about, at 15,000 per student, if you're not guesstimating how many students will be on campus, you're going to be in trouble in a hurry. If 5 students move in you didn't budget for, that's a problem. So the insured value factor, again, our contract says it's 6% of that maximum allowable tuition. There's been a lot of rumblings at the state level that it, quote unquote, should be 10%. That would be $240,000 more than what we're paying this year. That is something that we don't have an answer to at this point. So it
When does that contract with Freiburg Academy start?
29.
29?
Yep.
So get that up, I have a question.
Sure.
Question for everybody. Who pays $625 for a laptop?
Exactly.
$100.
Are you saying that's not a lot or that's a lot?
That's a lot.
Very low.
Purchase.
I mean, you
Wow.
could get them for
Very low.
For a bulk
$600 easily.
purchase, that's astronomical.
For a third grader? Hell yeah.
$100.
Yeah, they're max. Yeah,
We should buy that many at once.
that's far less than what they're being sold for.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So what? It's only $125? You're not gonna pay that. I'm not gonna pay that.
If I could pay that, I would. Going back
More than
to
everybody.
the budget. So I shared the initial draft, which is on the right. After our diving in, making some staffing adjustments, making adjustments in terms of the bus and so forth, you are seeing what a 2.1% increase budget to budget means in terms of what the towns will pay. So Stoneham, that 22.74%, that's tough. Sweden, 14.19%, that's tough. Lovell, it just so happens their student numbers dropped by 14, which is driving a pretty significant decrease. And so I want to spend a moment on this. As we talked about before, our increase from 1920 through this proposed budget still comes out to about 1.32% per year more that we're asking towns to pay. I think we have been incredibly responsible when it comes to what we are asking for support for the budget. I think, again, this demonstrates that we are meeting our budgetary priorities. This is a question that was asked, why do presentations matter? I think most bodies who are elected function in pretty much this way. We go through a process, the board does workshops, they take a final vote on the budget that then goes out, and the purpose of these meetings is to help people understand what it is you're voting on. So that's pretty much how I would answer that question. When one town has a significant increase in a budget year, can't the board just reduce what the town has to pay? No, because as I said before, it's driven by valuations and it's driven by student numbers. It has to be objective or else it would just get wild. I can't imagine just arbitrarily saying, well, it looks like Stone was paying a lot this year, let's knock it off and assign that to